I think this promotional broadcast may have given us the clearest clue yet to what destroyed the world in Silo, why the silos were built in Georgia, and why Silo 1 still seems to have control over what happens after people reach the surface. The clue is in the sequence of headlines, because once you put them together, Daniel, Charlotte, Victor, Thurman, and Per Stenson all fall into the same chain of events. Every one of them is moving toward the system Juliet lives under centuries later. Quick note on where the image came from, because I wanted to make sure this was official material before building a theory around it. Apple ran a live promo before the Season 3 trailer where these in-universe news reports appeared one at a time, with the outside imagery changing as the stream went on. Reddit user HopefulDesigner485 gathered the headlines into this image, which is how I found them. The first group of headlines spends a surprising amount of time on Daniel Keene. We first see Daniel as a rising political figure seeking nomination, and soon after he has won Georgia's 15th district. The coverage keeps returning to his earlier career as an engineer, including his history with the Army Corps of Engineers. His political role is already clear in the show, so all this attention on engineering feels like preparation for something that has not paid off yet. Georgia makes that detail more interesting because this same broadcast soon turns toward construction. Per Stenson buys a large parcel of land in Georgia, and soon the news is profiling him as the billionaire changing America. Construction begins on something described as his passion project. A later headline gets much more specific when a whistleblower claims that silo bunkers are being built throughout Georgia. That sequence puts Per very close to the physical origin of the silos. His land purchase and his passion project are appearing in the same news cycle as reports of silo construction. And by the end of the montage, the public seems familiar enough with the project for a news report to ask how the silo system works now. The silos appear to move from a strange construction story into something the public recognizes as a real system. The broadcast also shows the country becoming more frightened while that construction is happening. One report asks whether doomsday prepping is genius or paranoia, and another says a doomsday prepper conference has sold out. Around the same time, Senator Rosalind Thurman creates a war committee that she later describes as an abundance of caution measure. The atmosphere around the silo project is becoming perfect for a massive bunker system, because the public is being taught to expect some kind of catastrophe. Two other headlines tell us what kind of technology is developing during the same period. One asks whether nanotechnology is the future of defense, while another describes Dr. Victor Chernovich as the future of memory. Those ideas already exist in Juliet's world centuries later, which makes their appearance beside the construction of the silos feel important. Victor's connection is the easier one to follow because Season 3 has already shown him controlling Charlotte's access to her own memories. His treatment can suppress what she remembers and later allow selected memories to return. And centuries later, the silo system uses the same basic idea on a much larger scale. Juliet is drugged to suppress her memories, and the algorithm has an entire reset system for populations that know too much. Vitamin D Plus turns that same idea into something that can be pushed through the water supply, while the promo places Victor's work right beside the other pieces that eventually define life underground. Memory control is already developing while the silo project itself is taking shape. The nanotech headline may explain something even bigger, because Charlotte has already encountered a threat that nobody around her seems willing to explain openly. Her mission was launched from the USS Nimitz with communications that had been deliberately downgraded to unencrypted equipment, and Per Stenson was aboard the carrier when that happened. During the mission, Charlotte and the other pilots encountered a strange dark material in the sky, and the operation ended in disaster. The promotional material later uses the phrase gray goo, which gives that material a possible identity. Grey goo is a theoretical nanotechnology disaster where tiny self-replicating machines continue making copies of themselves and spread out of control, so a dark cloud or dust made from microscopic machines fits the language the promo is already using around defense technology. My theory is that Charlotte encountered an early form of the same technology that later killed the people who escaped Silo 17, and that connection becomes much more believable once you compare their deaths with the cleanings around Silo 18. The people there managed to cap the safeguard pipe during the uprising and eventually reached the surface in huge numbers. Solo later remembers that they stayed alive outside until the cloud came back, so their deaths begin after something changes around them. That timing gives the dust a purpose inside this theory. The safeguard can kill a rebellious population while everyone is still underground, and a surface weapon can deal with the same population after the safeguard has been defeated, and thousands of people have escaped. Silo 17 would have forced whoever controls the network to use the second option because the first one had already been physically blocked. The safeguard itself is established as a toxic system capable of wiping out a silo population. The cleaners from Silo 18 seem to be dealing with another controlled threat. Allison and Holston die very quickly after leaving, while Juliet survives because her suit is sealed with the good tape. A tiny change in the seal creates a huge change in survival time, which makes some kind of gas or chemical exposure around the cleaning area feel much more likely than every death being caused by the gray goo itself. Juliet's survival being tied to the better tape is established at the end of Season 1. We already know the Silo network has access to poison because the safeguard can release it into an entire population. The exact substance used during cleaning is still unidentified. The larger mechanism fits because the system can deliberately expose people to something lethal, while the suit seal controls how long that exposure takes to reach the cleaner. This gives the two kinds of deaths a clean separation. A cleaner leaves alone and is exposed to a local chemical threat that the normal tape cannot keep out for long, while Juliet's better seal carries her through it. When an entire population escapes after capping the safeguard, the problem has changed completely, and the cloud becomes the response once those people are loose on the surface. Silo 1 has a strong reason to stop that kind of escape. By Juliet's time, Silo 1 monitors the network and treats contact between populations as dangerous enough to threaten the safeguard. Thousands of people from Silo 17 walking freely across the surface could reach another silo, spread what they learned, and break the separation that keeps the whole project under control. The safeguard gives Silo 1 certainty before a rebellion reaches that point. It can end the population underground while the doors are still closed, which is useful even in a world where the surface is dangerous because the system decides when the killing happens. Once Silo 17 capped the pipe, that certainty disappeared. This is where the gray goo theory becomes much more interesting to me. If Silo 1 still has access to the same nanotechnology Charlotte encountered centuries earlier, the system has a second containment method it can trigger from outside the rebellious silo. The cloud can be released after a mass escape and stop the population before it reaches anyone else. This changes what the outside world may actually be. The theory allows for a badly damaged surface whose danger changes over time, with Silo 1 still able to make a particular area much more dangerous when somebody gets out. The Dirty Bomb story from the before time starts fitting into the same chain. Even the radiation checks around Washington keep coming back clean, which is a small detail on its own, but Helen and Daniel are already finding broader reasons to doubt the official version of the attack. Charlotte had become suspicious before her mission too, and Pierre's presence on the Nimitz makes the decisions around that mission even harder to explain. The investigation into the supposed Dirty Bomb and the conspiracy around the Before Times is already part of the show's Season 3 setup. The promo headlines show what happens politically around that fear. Thurman builds a war committee while doomsday preparation becomes a much bigger part of public life. At the same time, Pierre is pouring money into a construction project in Georgia, and the news begins talking about silo bunkers. If the Dirty Bomb story was covering a nanotech event, the people closest to the truth could prepare for the actual threat, while everyone else prepared for the story they were given. That would also explain why the headline about nanotechnology appears beside stories about military preparation and silo construction instead of feeling like some random technology story thrown into the background. Pierre sits unusually close to almost every part of that preparation. Season 3 identifies him as a major supporter of artificial intelligence. He founded the clinic where Charlotte is being treated, he was aboard the Nimitz during her mission, and the promotional broadcast connects his land purchase and passion project to the period when the silos are being built. Some of the promo cards are also branded Stenson News. If that branding is part of the in-universe story, the Stenson name reaches into the media as well, which would give Pierre influence over the information people are receiving while his own project is becoming national news. That kind of media influence would fit the society we see centuries later, where information is controlled almost as tightly as physical movement. Daniel may be another part of the project from a different direction. The promo keeps reminding us that he understands engineering while his political career is rising in the same state where the silos are being built, and his current investigation is pulling him toward the people behind the crisis. I think Season 3 is setting him up to become important to the design or implementation of the silo system once he finally learns what Pierre and Thurman are doing. Victor's work supplies another piece by giving the future silo system a way to control what a population carries from one generation to the next, which becomes essential once the founders decide that certain knowledge can threaten the whole project. By Juliet's time, people can be separated from their history, their memories can be chemically altered, communication between silos is restricted, movement is controlled, and reproduction requires permission. Per's obsession with AI matters even more once those pieces are together. Centuries later, an artificial intelligence sits at the center of these decisions and speaks with enough personality to manipulate Camille, bargain with Juliet, and decide when an entire population should lose its memories. The people who created the silos needed something that could keep enforcing their rules long after the original founders were dead, and an AI built around their priorities would solve that problem. Season 3 has established the algorithm as the intelligence Camille deals with directly while it tries to preserve control of Silo 18. The voice may even preserve something of one of the people we are meeting in the before times. Daniel and Victor are both worth watching because their knowledge ends up closely connected to the future system, while Per is the clearest link to AI itself. For now, the algorithm carrying the founder's judgment forward is the theory with the clearest support, and some level of human involvement inside Silo 1 still fits the way the voice speaks. Its use of we makes that human layer especially interesting. Silo 1 could contain people who still work alongside the algorithm, or the AI could be speaking for the group that created it. Either version would explain why the voice feels so personal while still operating as part of a much larger system. When I go back to the news image after all of that, the pieces of Silo's future seem to be appearing one by one. Daniel brings engineering into politics, Victor brings memory control, Per brings AI and the physical project in Georgia, Thurman gives the crisis a government structure, and the nanotech headline may be pointing toward the weapon that changes the outside world. Centuries later, those pieces are still there in a system where the algorithm runs the network. Memory drugs control dangerous knowledge, the safeguard can kill a population underground, and something like dust arrives after Silo 17 manages to escape onto the surface. The theory I buy right now is that the silos were built by people who understood the real threat long before the wider public did, and Per Stenson may have been one of the people bringing the technologies together. Nanotechnology either caused the catastrophe they were preparing for, or became a weapon inside the system they built afterward, and some version of it may still be under Silo 1's control. Silo 17 becomes incredibly important under this theory because its population may have proved that the surface itself is only one part of the danger. They capped the safeguard, reached the outside alive, and stayed there until the cloud returned, which means escape can get past the first layer of control and still run into another one. The most disturbing possibility is that Silo 1 may still control what is allowed to survive outside. If that is where Season 3 is going, then Charlotte's mission, the nanotech headline, and the deaths around Silo 17 are all parts of the same story, separated by centuries but connected by the system Per and the others were building before the world fell apart.